Hello. Hi, Renee. I hope I've pronounced your name correctly. Firstly, just thanks very much. You seem to spend quite a bit of time helping others, and it's greatly appreciated. And I just wondered if I could exchange this video with your video, because I can clearly see that I've got into some really lazy habits, and then probably not good habits. But I just wondered if I could show you how this has come about, and just if you've got time, maybe you could just point me in the right direction, because it'd be nice to get back on track with how the software kind of tells me to be working, rather than adapting fairly cumbersome tools. So I'll just show you. This is just a basic floor plan of a 3-bed house that we're going to put an extension on. So I've got my dimension tools up here, all the usual ones. So if I go for a running dimension, this exterior wall is actually in 3 layers, so the roof sits on it correctly. It's brick, insulation gap, block and plaster, an Englishism. So if I run that dimension across here, that wall is set for, the dimension line is set for the internal, as is this wall, this internal wall here, but that's gone to the other side of the wall. Now if I flip the wall, actually it's not even gone to the plaster line, but that's because I haven't set my defaults to that wall properly. I know how to do that, so I won't sidetrack with that. But the point I have is to get that to dimension to the face of the wall, either the plaster or the structure of the wall. I need to flip that wall, and then it's just going to give me the same problem in the bathroom. So I'll fix one problem and gain a new one. So I don't find that to be overly helpful. If I go to auto dimensions, yeah, sure, I'm sure I don't want centerline dimensions for windows, but I'm sure I can reset all of that, no problem at all. And as with these walls, I can get them from each side. But as I was saying in my last video, I don't want this many dimensions, certainly not on sort of outline planning plans, which we keep to a fairly basic level just for quick reference. This would be more in phase 2 of construction documents, and even then we kind of insist on site measurements over here. But anyway, I digress. Some of these dimensions wouldn't be very useful to me initially, so I would find myself deleting a lot of them. That's, you know, that's got to sort of factor in the width of the wall. So I'm not really sure that the auto dimension tool is that useful to me by the time I've deleted half of them. You know, certainly on a prelim plan I'd only really be looking for external dims, and yeah, they're spaced out very clearly, and in this instance that is the tool I would use every time. In this instance, I've got to reset my wall defaults for external dimensions, and then when I want to do an internal dimension, I'm going back to reset them again, unless there's another default. And I've been through the dimension defaults so many times, and the problem is I don't fully understand them. Is it defaults or preferences? I can't remember, but you know, if you go into dimensions, say auto, say temporary dimensions, you know, wall surface, locate wall dimension layer, you know, that'll fix my problem for one scenario, but scupper me on another scenario. And I'll be really honest, I don't fully understand all of this. That is the truth. So of course I've just taken the line of least resistance when I've been under pressure to get work out, and just said, oh, I'll just put a point-to-point dimension on there very carefully now. And yeah, I can see you're right, it's the wrong tool for the job. So, you know, I'm in some real downtime like the rest of the world at the moment, and I think it's going to be a good time for me to have a really good look at this. I really appreciate your help on this, I really do. Um, you know, I think the point-to-point dimension across this room is, I've got no issues with it at all, as long as you've got your eye on the job and not YouTube or something, you know, that snaps absolutely perfectly. I've got no issues with that. Of course, it's not giving me a huge amount of assistance with externals, but then, you know, I could set this to the external dimension. I could set the dimension layer to the external of the wall and do all my external dimensions and just use a handful of points internally. So I'm just kind of saying, to me, it is a very useful, and if used with diligence, very accurate as well. And of course, one thing I love about it is, if I click that wall and then click the dim, I can move the wall with it as well. So, you know, it's great. So, but this is just to say, I don't think I'm right, and I've clearly developed some bad habits. I just thought you might be intrigued to know how they came about. It's partly because I haven't had the time to continue my sort of self-teaching of software, and partly because I have it in my head that if I do continue to self-teach, I'm going to meet conflicts in the output that I need to generate, i.e., you know, if I fix the external, my internals will get all messed up, and vice versa. And I'm really happy with that. That, to me, is just bang on accurate. I've got no issues with that at all. You know, and we can do a bath to a wall, anything, really. You know, that to me is a good tool, used with diligence and awareness, because, as you say, you can make mistakes so easily. But as I sort of tried to explain, we do have a bit of a blame culture in this country, which is not always healthy. But if I put some dimensions on a drawing, especially on elevations, especially on ceiling heights, you know, if a builder put a ceiling to a fixed dimension, knocked the wall down between the new and the old, and had a 30mm discrepancy, the builder would say, well, I followed the drawing, you know, and all of a sudden it becomes my fault. And it's a sad culture, and it's not prevalent throughout the industry. Most good contractors, we call them builders, will actually do their due diligence and take datums, check their levels, etc., etc. But that in itself negates the reason to litter a drawing in too many dimensions, again, especially elevations. So there are instances where I do need them, and there are instances that again, the dimension tools won't do. I had one recently with a lot of steel valley beams, literally with bird's mouth cuts in them, and we had different seat cuts for the steels than we did to the carpentry work, and pad stones and so on, and it was almost impossible to auto dimension that in CAD drawings. In fact, I would say impossible. I can also send you an image of that. I hope that makes some sense. I'm sure I'm not very good at this video making thing, but I really appreciate you taking the time. Just quickly, I'm running out of time. I really appreciate your twin motion videos as well. They've been a huge help. I've really enjoyed them. So thanks a lot. Cheers.